Hello everyone and welcome to Life Begins at 20. My name is Mark and I have the brand new Commander 2016 deck, Entropic Uprising, to open for you. This is one of the 5 new decks with each having a 4-colour commander. Yidris Maelstrom Wielder is the commander for this deck with colours blue, black, red and green. The partner mechanic is something new to Commander 2016, where you can have 2 commanders if they both have partner. The combination of their colour identity determines which colours you can have in your deck. If you decide to do this, the 2 cards start in the command zone, and the command attacks, if they get removed from the game, only applies to each individual card rather than together. This would then cause the remaining deck to be 98 cards. Each commander box contains the following: a 100 card commander deck, which includes 4 foil commanders, foil oversized card of your commander, 10 double-sided tokens, a deck storage box, a deck strategy insert which talks about what cards are in the deck and strategies for it, and a magic quick reference guide. So let's open up the deck and see what we've got inside. I'll put a link in the description below for the deck list here for you, and I'll write it out as well. So let's see what we've got. So with our commander for the deck is Yidris Maelstrom Wielder. So this is a blue, black, red and a green for a 5/4 creature with trample. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, as you cast spells from your hand this turn, they gain Cascade. That is an incredible ability for this command. It's probably one of the strongest actually for all the sets. So Cascade is when you cast the spell, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less. You may cast it without paying its mana cost and put the exiled cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is fantastic. There are so many cards in here which you could have high cost, and it just means you're going to get a free expensive spell if it all comes off for you. And you can just keep doing it over and over again in each turns. Really nice. Really nice. If you're ever going to build a new commander deck around it, just having a full Cascade deck would be immense. Next we've got Kydele, Chosen of Kruphix. So for 2, a green and a blue, you get to tap and add a mana to your mana pool for each card you've drawn this turn. With the amount of card draw that's available in this deck, this is fantastic. You're just going to have a nice bit of ramp going on there. Next we've got Thrasios, Triton Hero. So for a green and a blue you get a 1/3 where you can pay 4, scry 1, reveal the top card from your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, otherwise draw a card. It's like a slightly better Coiled Oracle. I actually quite like this card, it suits well for this deck. And here we have probably one of my favourite cards from this deck, Vial, Smasher the Fierce. This thing is incredible. Especially I'm going to put it into my cube just because the less amount of opponents you have, the more amazing he becomes. So for 1, a black and a red, you get a 2/3. Whenever you cast your first spell each turn, he deals damage equal to that spell's converted mana cost to an opponent chosen at random. In a 5-player game, you're going to end up doing a fair bit of damage over the course of the game, but in a one-on-one situation like cube would be in a limited environment, this could end up wiping your opponent away. Really do like this card. And then we have our dual-sided tokens there. Do like having those dual-sided rather than loads of individual ones. I don't know how many surveys I've got from Kaladesh, but never mind. So we have a lot of cards early on in the set in the deck which are cheap creatures which end up giving you mana ramp. So, for example, here for a 1 and a green, you get a 1/1 when it enters the battlefield. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library and put a land from among them into your hand. Put the rest in your graveyard. Quite useful, especially turn 2 if you haven't managed. Or sorry, turn 3 if you haven't managed to get a land ready. Good. Wall of Blossoms, enter the battlefield drawing a card, like our draw card effects. Coiling Oracles, card I mentioned earlier. This is great. I mean, that's just a bigger. Thrasios is just a bigger version of it, but really nice in this, especially for ramping up your mana to cast some really big spells. Spellheart Chimera, so for 1, a blue and a red, you get a flying trample creature, and its power is equal to the number of instant sorcery cards in your graveyard. The amount of cards you're going to discard to be able to draw more cards with spells later on, this thing could get huge. I do like this card, and flying and trample's fantastic. Gamekeeper, so for 3 and a green you get a 2/2. Whenever it dies you may exile it. If you do, reveal cards from the top of your library and field creature card. Put that onto the battlefield and put all other cards revealed this way into your graveyard. Again, put loads of spells into your graveyard for the Chimera, and yeah, it'd just be huge. Bloodbraid Elf, so for 2, a red and a green, he's got haste and cascade with 3 and a 2. So there is the potential there to almost cascade your first spell from Yidris into this, which then can cascade into another spell for a nice little combo. Or to be perfectly honest, there are plenty of spells in here which cost less than 3. So 3 or less, so you can end up getting something on the battlefield for free there. Horizon Chimera, so for 2, a green and a blue, you've got a flash creature, which is really nice. Flying and trample with 3/2, and whenever you draw a card you gain 1 life. You could flash this in if you need to have a nice little blocker, or if you're just about to end up casting a spell which gives you loads of card draw for a nice bit of life. This, over the course of the game, if it's out, is going to get you plenty of life, especially with this deck. Soul Ring, your commander staple for some mana. Farewell Stone for more mana. Your Rakdos Signet, Simic Signet is great. I mean, just the Signets are fantastic cards. I really do like those. I've got all of them in my cube. Commander Spheres, there's some more mana there, and you can sacrifice it to draw a card if you need to. Whisper Silk Cloak is great, so a quick creature can't be blocked and has Shroud. If you can put this on your commander, you're always going to get that Cascade proc. Really nice. Frenzied Fugue, one of my favourite cards from the set. I'm definitely going to be putting one of these into my cube. So, enter the battlefield at the beginning of your upkeep. Gain control of an enchanted permanent until the end of your turn. This could be anything. It could be lands, artifacts, creatures, or even their planeswalkers. And it gains haste until the end of turn, and it just keeps doing it until this enchantment's removed. Perfect scenario is your opponent's got a planeswalker ready to ultimate their next turn. You play this, steal it, and ultimate it yourself. Really do like the options you have with that card. Chain of Vapor, so for 1 blue, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then that permanent's controller may sacrifice a land. If that player does, he or she may copy this spell and choose another new target for that copy. Might be fairly useful for anything you've got going on there, anything in this deck. Or you could just get rid of another one of the opponent's bigger creatures. Quite useful. Rakdos Charm, a nice spell there that has a variety of options. I do like having the versatility in choosing what I would like to do with the spells. I love that. Ancient Excavation, again, one of the new cards here. So you can draw cards, which sits into this deck quite nicely, equal to the number of cards you have in your hand. Then discard a card for each card drawn this way, and basic land cycling if you need some land. This is great. I really do like the amount of card draw that's in this. Bituminous Blast, so for 3, a black and a red, again with Cascade, so it fits into Yidris there and some other cards we've got. Blast deals 4 damage to target creature. It's expensive for just doing 4 damage to a creature, but the Cascade ability means that you potentially get 4 damage out of this, and then a 4 mana creature straight into play, or another spell which could do even more damage. So good value there. Windfall, so for 2 and a blue, each player discards his or her hand and draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards with the player discarded this way. The likelihood is, because you have lots of spells that cheapen your cascades and all that kind of stuff, you're going to end up having less cards than your opponent, so it means that you're going to get more value out of this than your opponents will do. Really like that card. Parting Thoughts, again, destroy target creature, you draw X cards, lose X life, where X is the number of counters on that creature. Depending on what whose opponent you're playing, you're going to end up getting lots out of this. Or worst case scenario, you could even do it on your own creature if you've got a couple of tokens lying, a couple of +1/+1 counters. Far Wanderings, search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, tap, shuffle your library. It's quite expensive for that, but the threshold cost on this, if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard with the amount of discard outlets, you're going to have that. Instead, search your library for up to 3 basic lands and put them onto the battlefield tapped. So I will happily, every single day, pay 3 mana to put 3 lands tapped on the battlefield. Grave Upheaval, another one of the new land cycling cards there. Put a target creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control and it gains haste. Your opponents might have a nice creature you'd like to steal, or you can bring something of yours back if you really need it. Great card there. Treasure Cruise, again, massive spell. With Vial Smasher, that's going to be your first spell of the turn. 8 damage to an opponent just off the bat, plus drawing 3 cards and exiling things from your graveyard to make it cheaper. Great, love it. Treacherous Terrain is a really nice card in this. Again, an expensive cost of 8 mana there, but it deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of lands that player controls. So you can do loads of damage there. Plus, again, if you can have it with Vial Smasher there, loads of damage, absolutely loads. Interesting place to put some basic lands. But anyway, Goblin Spymaster, this is a pretty good card there. So for 2, you get a 2/1 with First Strike, and at the beginning of each opponent's end step, that player creates a 1/1 red goblin creature token with creatures you control attack each combat if able. This card is really cool. If you're playing an opponent that's going to be aggressive anyway, it's not really going to help you. But if you're going to be playing an opponent, such as the Stalwart Unity deck, where they're just trying to hide behind a pillow fort and get themselves bigger while you attack everybody else, this is going to wreck their plans. If they're trying to be defensive, you're just going to ruin everything with this card. I do like that. Runehorn Hellkite, another one of the new cards there. So for 5 and a red, you get a flying 5/5. You can then pay a 5 and a red, exile it from your graveyard. Each player discards his or her hand and draws 7 cards. Again, the likelihood is you're going to have less cards than your opponent, plus it just means they're going to have more cards in their graveyard for your creatures to potentially get bigger, and 7 card draw is always useful, always useful. Boom Pile, another one of the new cards. Flip a coin. If you would win the flip, destroy all non-land permanents. Nice board wipe for you. It's fairly cheap, but the 50-50 option means it's not always going to come off, but it is a good laugh. Curtain's Call, probably one of my favourite of the Undaunted cards that are new. So for 5 and a black, you get to destroy 2 target creatures. Depending on the size of the creatures, you might want to pay that anyway, but the spell costs 1 less to cast for each opponent you have. Again, in a 5, say for example, if you're playing all 5 decks at the same time, it's only going to be 1 and a black to destroy 2 big creatures at instant speed. Perfect. Cruel Entertainment, this looks so much fun, especially in a multiplayer game. You could just have so much of a laugh with this. I mean, that's generally the principle with this deck anyway. It's not always going to work out amazingly for you, but when you can get everything going off, it's just going to be so fun. So for 6 and a black, you get to choose a target player and another target player. The first player controls the second player's turn during the second player's next turn, and the second player controls the first player's turn during their next turn. It's quite a mouthful, but basically choose 2 players and they control each other on their next turns. It could backfire on you. They could just both agree to then attack you because you've done this to them, but you could end up having a situation where they end up wrecking each other for the next turn because they don't want the other one to get ahead. It's just going to be so funny. Past in Flames, so for 3 and a red, with Mythic set, we've got here, each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until the end of turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost, plus it also has flashback itself as well. Like I was saying, you don't mind getting anything going into your graveyard. You don't mind your spells going in there or your creatures or anything like that, just because you have ways of being able to cast them from the graveyard with either inbuilt in the card or things like this. Really good in this, really good in this deck. Ghastly Conscription, so for 5 and 2 blacks, you get to exile all creature cards from target player's graveyard in a face-down pile, shuffle that pile, then manifest those cards. So to manifest a card, put it onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, turn it face up at any time for its mana cost if it's a creature card, which is going to be because you're already after his creatures here. You could just end up getting yourself a massive little army. Yes, you're going to have to pay the mana costs, but you wouldn't have had access to those cards in the first place, so it could be great for you. Army of the Damned, well, let's face it, who the hell doesn't need 13 black 2/2 zombie creature tokens with the potential of flashback? Yes, 8 is expensive, just think Vial Smasher of the Fierce is on the board, loads of damage, flashback with 10, again, great. I have no issues in paying 8 mana for 26, an equivalent of 26/26. Not an issue. Academy Elite, 3 and a blue for Human Wizard, enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of instant and sorcery cards in all graveyards, not just your own. This could be massive, especially with the amount of discards you're going to have on just you or everybody else as well with spells in this deck. Pay 2 and a blue, remove a +1/+1 counter from him, and draw a card, then discard a card. So hypothetically, you get him in as a 10/10. You're not going to have an issue in drawing 10 cards later on in the game to get rid of him and then potentially flash him to get him back. Sangromancer, Here we've got for 2 and 2 black, you've got a 3/3 flying creature. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you gain 3 life. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you may gain 3 life. Let's face it, you've got board wipes in here, which are going to end up getting you plenty of life. Plus, loads of discard outlets to gain you loads of life. Really good card in this deck. Glint-Eye Nephilim, so for blue, a black, a red and a green. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, as a 2/2, you can draw that many cards. Potentially you're going to get 2 cards if you manage to get it through. For 1, you get to discard a card, and it gets +1/+1 to the end of turn. So realistically, you could end up equipping it to give it Shroud and Unblockable or anything like that, so you can always get in for damage. And then you could just pump it up massively just to get loads and loads of cards. Fantastic. Aeon Chronicler, so for 3 and 2 blue, you get its power and toughness equal to the number of cards in your hand. You can suspend it for 3 and a blue plus X, where obviously it can't be 0. Whenever a time counter is removed, while he's exiled, you get to draw a card. If you don't need him straight away, pump it up. Fine, go for it. You can end up getting some card draw. Everyone likes card draw. Guiltfeeder, so for 3 and 2 black, you get a 0/4 with Fear, so it can't be blocked except by an artifact or black creatures. Whenever it attacks and isn't blocked, defending player loses 1 life for each card in his or her graveyard. Later on in the game, this is going to be massive. With the amount of discard outlets you've got from spells that affect everybody else in the game, you can end up doing loads of damage. Loads of damage. Consuming Aberration, so for 3, a blue and a black, its power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in your opponent's graveyards. Again, all those discard outlets is going to make this huge. Whenever you cast a spell, each opponent reveals from the top of his or her library until she reveals a land card. Put those cards into his or her graveyard. Whenever it attacks, it just gets even bigger and bigger and bigger. If you can make it unblockable, you've just wiped out someone. Easy. Nath of the Gilt-Leaf, so for 3, a black and a green, you've got a 4/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may have target opponent discard a card at random. Again, more discard outlets, everyone likes that. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you may create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. If you have him out on the board and you can play one of your other spells, you're just going to have yourself a little army. Everyone's happy there. Ethereum Horn Sorcerer, so for 4, a blue and a red, you've got a 3/6 wizard, and you can pay 1 a blue and a red, return him to its owner's hand. It has Cascade. So the best thing I feel to be able to do with this, cast him, get some 5 mana spell for free if that best case scenario, bring him back to your hand and be able to do it again later on. Great. Dragon Mage, so for 5 and 2 red, you've got a flying 5/5. When it deals combat damage to a player, each player discards his or her hand, then draws 7 cards. Again, we like discarding things, we like making your opponents discard things. Yep, them drawing 7 cards not necessarily great, but if it means the rest of your stuff is getting buffed up, it's probably something you're willing to do. Blood Tyrant next, so we've got 4, a blue, a black and a red, so for 7 you get a 5/5 flying and trample. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player loses 1 life. Put a +1/+1 counter on Blood Tyrant for each 1 life lost this way. Multiplayer game, beginning of each upkeep, he's just going to get up by 4, and then again, and then again, and then again. He's going to become massive. Whenever a player loses the game, put 5 +1/+1 counters on him. He's just going to get huge so quickly. So quickly. It has to be dealt with. Do like that. Chromatic Lantern. It is a shame that this card is only in this deck. It would have been perfect for the rest of them. So lands you control have tap to add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool, or you can tap this for add 1 to any mana of your mana pool. I mean, that should have been in every single one. It's a fantastic card. Really strong. Love it. Burgeoning, so for a green, whenever an opponent plays a land, you may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. Really good card in this deck. You want to be ramping. You want to get your mana pool really up really quickly to be able to cast these really expensive spells and just take over the game. Waste Not, so for 1 and a black, whenever an opponent discards a creature card, create a zombie creature token. They're going to be discarding lots of creature cards. Would love to have this out. So whenever it discards a land card, add 2 mana to your mana pool, and whenever an opponent discards a non-creature, non-land card, you draw a card. This could get you such an advantage really quickly if you can have this out and cast one of your other spells. Really like this. Next we have Chaos Warp. So for 2 and a red and instant speed, the owner of target permanent shuffles it into his or her library, then reveals the top card of his or her library. If it's a permanent card, he or she can put it onto the battlefield. If you can get rid of something massive from your opponent and then they bring out something really small or meaningless, this card has just been amazing. It also then means you're attacking, it gets rid of a potential blocker, it just gets rid of a threat. Yeah, there is a very small chance that they could bring that threat back out, but something that you'd be willing to take. Evacuation, so for 3 and 2 blue, return all creatures to their owner's hands. Nice little board wipe there. You don't necessarily need that many creatures going on anyway. Wheel of Fate, so for suspend 4, each player discards his or her hand and draws 7 cards when it comes out. Great. Put it out there. You know it's coming. You can base all of your spells and abilities and attacks and everything around that coming out. Play the right card on that turn. Massive. Decimate there for 2, a red and a green. Destroy target artifact, target creature, target enchantment, and target land. I'm not going to say no to killing 4 things for 4. Great. Whispering Madness for 2, a blue and a black. Each player discards his or her hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way, with Cypher. Again, you're always probably going to have less cards than your opponent in your hand, so you're going to get a nice advantage out of this. Yes, other players might do as well, but we're only thinking of you here. And having it as Cypher means that you may exile this spell card and onto a creature. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, you get to then cast it as again for no mana cost. So realistically, you could put this on Yidris, you could put this on anybody. They deal damage regularly. You're going to get this over and over and over again. Really like that. Devastation Tide. So for 3 and 2 blue, return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. Again, and a miracle cost as well, which means if it's the first card you've drawn, great. 2 cost to wipe the board. Yes, please. Reforge the Soul. So for 3 and 2 red, each player discards his or her hand and draws 7 cards. Useful for you again. Miracle cost, again, which is great. If it's the first card you draw, 2 to do that. Yeah, sign me up. Worm Harvest. So for 2 and either 3 blacks, 3 greens, or a combination of, create a 1/1 black and green worm creature token for each land card in your graveyard. You might have quite a fair few of these. And it also has Retrace, so you may cast this from your graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to paying its other costs. I like having things in the graveyard to be able to do that with, so everyone likes that. Spell Twine, nice card for this deck as well. So for 5 and a blue, exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard and target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard. Copy those cards and cast the copies if able without paying their mana costs. Perfect. You're going to have massive spells in your graveyard anyway if you've managed to cast any of them. Your opponents might have something great in there as well that you might want to utilise. Fantastic. Whims of the Fates, 5 and a red for a sorcery. Starting with you, each player separates all permanents he or she controls into 3 piles. Then each player chooses one of his or her piles at random and sacrifices the permanents. At any point in time in the game, reducing the board state for you might actually be really useful. It probably will be really useful. Just having all the extra creature cards or instants or whatever, all of that kind of stuff in your opponent's graveyard means some of the cards you have earlier on in the deck will end up getting pumped up as well. Great. Volcanic Vision for 5 and 2 red. You get to return target instant sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Volcanic Vision deals damage equal to that card's converted mana cost to each creature your opponents control, and then exile it. Imagine playing this with Vial Smasher, so you've done 7 damage off the bat, you're then going to get yourself another 7 mana spell, bang, that's 14 damage to someone and 7 to everybody else, and then 7 damage to all of everybody's creatures. That is a massive swing. Really like that. In Garruk's Wake, another expensive spell we've got here, so 7 and 2 black, destroy all creatures you don't control and all planeswalkers you don't control. Multiplayer game? Yeah, I'd pay 9 for that. Then we're on to the lands, so we've got Exotic Orchards, just your 2 lands there, more islands, even though there was some earlier on, so more basics, plenty of basics. Ash Barrens, great card. I'm actually going to be putting one of these into my cube for definite. So you can tap for a colourless mana, or if you need a certain type of mana later on in the game, you can land cycle it if you draw it, or early on in the game it can be a mana fix if you need to. Fine. Command Tower, good card, 3 manas. Gaining life coming in tapped. Evolving Wild's useful, 3 manas, comes in tapped and gives you life. 3 mana, bounce lands. No maximum hand size. With the amount of cards you could end up drawing this game, this could be great. Also, then combos with another one of the cards in the deck. I can't actually remember the name right now. I'll put it up on the screen. It just means that the bigger the hand size you've got, that creature can get massive. Really like that. Tapped gains life. Pay lands. 3 a bounce land there. Another tap land. Again, really happy that the last cards weren't stuck together. I had that earlier on in one of the other decks. Entropic Uprising looks like a really fun deck. Loads of card draw, and with possibly the strongest commander out of all 5. The potential for loads of very fun cascade madness that can result in ridiculous things happening. Milling your opponent with card draw, causing your creatures to get bigger, is great. Loads of cards which can be played from the graveyard as well, which means you aren't worried about discarding cards. Plus, if you can keep Vial Smasher the Fierce on the board for long enough, you will end up blowing your opponents away very quickly. Let me know what you think of this deck in the comments section below. Was it one of the decks that you've picked up? Links to the deck openings for the other 4 Commander 2016 decks can be found on this page and in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up as it really helps the channel to grow. There has been a massive increase to subscriber levels, so thank you all so much for joining the channel, and if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more Magic the Gathering content. I just want to say a huge thank you to Pendrakes for getting the products to me on release day. The customer service was fantastic when ordering the products, so I could get the videos out for you as soon as possible. For the UK viewers, there is a link to the store in the description below, which has very competitive prices for all trading card products. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.